I'm on a roll today. I am finally catching up on making a ton of YouTube content for you, reviewing a lot of books. I have a lot of book hauls and book review videos coming out for you now that I have a new phone after getting it stolen, leaving work in London, and after being really sick for the last month. So I finally have decided to review some books that I read over the last, well, I guess since January, because I haven't reviewed some books that I read before I restarted this YouTube channel, plus a few recent reads that I have not had a chance to chat with you about. So we are going to talk about 6 books that I have read recently, what I thought about them. You can find me on all social media platforms. My name is Ragan. Hello, if we haven't met before, where we talk about fantasy and fantasy romance primarily, and a sprinkle of other stuff, but mostly we chat about fantasy and fantasy romance. So let's get started. The first book that I'm going to talk about is actually a new release, and that would be This Vicious Grace by Emily Feed. This is a Fairy Loot exclusive edition that has lemons on the inside. I hauled this recently. It's a very beautiful book. Comes with some spoiler art. Spoiler art? No, not spoiler art. Character art. Comes with some character art, which is really pretty. And then, of course, we have some pretty character art on the inside. And then in the back, we have the love interest here. So this follows a girl whose name is Alessa, and she hires Dante, who is a bodyguard. Alessa has a power that she kills people when she touches them, and this is a YA fantasy romance book. I'm going to use that term loosely. This was sold to me through Fairy Loot and reviews that I saw on Instagram as enemies to lovers, a bodyguard trope. It kind of gave me the illusion that this is going to be new adult. I know it came in the YA box, but you know YA has such a broad age range and maturity content that this, to me, I was under the impression that this is going to be targeted towards older readers. And that just wasn't the case. This is definitely a YA book. I thought it was very info dumpy in the fantasy setting, especially in the beginning. I was reading this on the couch one morning and I was struggling to keep my eyes awake. I kept yawning because it was just page after page of info dumping, and it just didn't, nothing stuck with me. I read this book about a month ago and I can't really tell you what happens. We follow one character's point of view. I think we only follow one character's point of view, and Alessia needs to marry someone, and she's supposed to save the world with her power, but her power isn't explained very well. There's this magical competition for who's going to be her partner to help her fulfill this destiny, and the competition just was not fleshed out well enough. The characters weren't memorable. No one was really likable. I didn't care enough to dislike someone either, which is kind of almost worse because you want to feel something, and I just wasn't feeling anything. There was also this inspiration from I don't know if this is correct, but when I was reading this, I kept being taken back to 7th grade in Catholic grade school when we were studying Moses, because the plague that's coming, that comes every so many years if this magical chosen one doesn't use their powers to save everyone and defeat this thing, or these scarabs, am I saying that correctly, the giant beetles that came down over ancient Egypt, one of the plagues during Moses's time. You know what I'm talking about, if you are familiar with that religion, that kind of scenario in Christianity. It was just reading almost fanfic of that. I don't know how to describe it. I was she's definitely inspired here by ancient Egypt and scarabs and plagues and things, but we're gonna throw it in an Italian fantasy setting. I just didn't care enough to like it or dislike it. It was also super YA because we have the I've never been touched before female lead, which it can be done well, but at this stage in my life, I'm 27, I want to see a more mature approach to that. This was I'm 16 or however old she was, I don't remember. Maybe she was older actually. She might have been 19 or something. I've never been touched before, and let's do it for the first time, and I'm over that. I'm over that trope if it's not done in a mature, steamy way. This was just so YA. Not that that's a bad thing. If you like YA books, which I normally do, this could be for you. For me, this book in particular, I think I would have enjoyed more if I was 15 or 16. So unfortunately, this was a bit of a mixed bag for me, and I ended up giving it 2 stars. The writing just wasn't developed enough. I didn't like the characters. The plot was meh. Nothing really felt urgent. I didn't understand the world enough to care about it. The sequel is coming out. The cover's gorgeous. I'll pop it up on the screen if you want to take a look. I don't know if I'm going to be continuing on with this series, so that doesn't mean that I won't give Emily Feed another try. I think this is her debut book, and she definitely has potential to be a fantastic writer for my taste. So if she writes something else in a different world, I will give it a go. But for this one, I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on. Let me know your thoughts on it. Okay, I spent way too much time talking about that book. Okay, so we're going to talk about another book that I read this year, which is Daughter of the Moon Goddess by Suli Tan. I did review this on TikTok. I did an in-depth review of that about maybe 2 months ago. So this is book 1 in the Celestial Kingdoms duology. Book 2 is called Heart of the Sun Warrior, and that actually comes out on November 10th of this year. So like around the time that I'm putting up this video. This is a retelling of the Mid-Autumn legend from Chinese mythology. So it is a fantasy book that's inspired by Chinese mythology. It follows a daughter who is that sounds so dumb. It follows a girl who is the daughter of the moon goddess, as the title says. This, on paper, is everything that I would like. I love mythology. I love whimsical, lush fantasy settings that are very magical and wholesome and beautiful and interesting and colorful. And this has that. We have that kind of world, and we have this beautiful map I want to show you of the celestial kingdoms, and you have like the Western Sea and the demon realm, and you have the mortal realm, you have the coral palace, the phoenix kingdom, the fragrant mulberry grove, the eternal spring forest. You have all these amazing, beautiful places to explore. And we have a girl who's trying to save her mother, who was basically, she's been imprisoned on the moon because she stole something from her husband that was a gift from the king of the realm. And so she's been enslaved basically to take care of the moon, and her daughter sets out on a mission to save her mother from this eternal fate. And this was a cover buy for me. It was actually a gift from my husband. We were walking around the shopping mall back in January or February when this book was first released, and I saw it and I was like, this is beautiful. I love ancient China, I love mythology, I love fantasy. This has romance in it. This is probably going to be an amazing book, and I like to read it. And so he bought it for me, which was amazing, and I did read it that week. And the first part of the book was so good, and I really felt the character's struggles because she's falling in love with the prince who she shouldn't be falling in love with, because obviously she can't be with him. She's in a disguise. There's kind of a Mulan aspect in that, not that she's disguised as a man, but she's disguising herself as someone who she shouldn't be, obviously, because she's not supposed to be where she is. She's supposed to be on the moon with her mother. And I really felt her longing and her love, and I really enjoyed the first part of this book. And then it took a dive, and then it went back up, and then it took a dive, and it went back up, and then it just dove back down for the remainder of the book. My biggest issue with this book is the pacing. It's like the author tried to shove in 2.5 books into 1 book. We get multiple climaxes in the plot, which was confusing. Upon retrospect, I can see a little bit of why this happened, because this book is broken up, I believe, into 3 parts, and each part has its ups and downs. But what was so jarring to me as the reader is that we would get to one stage where it's like, okay, this is the problem. So-and-so has been kidnapped. And then that would be resolved in 3 pages. And then it's like, okay, that wasn't the main climax of this book. We still have another, 150 pages to go. Okay, it's this thing that we're supposed to try to steal back and save the kingdom. And then that would be resolved in 10 pages. And I just felt like I was on a ship with the plot and the pacing, and it completely drew me out and away from the characters. But I still liked the writing style. However, at the end of this book, after going through love triangles and plot pacing that was a bit off, and it just left me feeling, kind of by the end of it. Like, I wasn't sure how to feel about what I read. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't great, and that's why I ended up giving it 3 stars. I do recommend reading this series if you like mythology and you like Spin the Dawn and you like Caraval, you like lush fantasy worlds, but it was not a favorite of mine. Heart of the Sun Warrior, like I said, comes out this November. I do not have it pre-ordered. I will read Heart of the Sun Warrior, but I'm not going to pay full price for it, so I'm gonna wait until it's on sale, or I can pick it up secondhand or something, because I didn't love this book enough to get the Fairy Loot exclusive or pre-order the Waterstones exclusive. So unfortunately, this one was a bit of a letdown, but I still have good memories reading it, you know, so I don't want to say that it's a bad book, because it's not. It just was a little bit underdeveloped for me. And also, I should mention very quickly, it wraps up quite nicely. There is a hint of room for a sequel, but I don't feel like the sequel is necessary. It feels like the enemy was defeated, the love triangle was wrapped up, we saved what we were supposed to be saving, we defeated what we were supposed to be defeating, and I actually wanted her to end up being with the other guy, and like maybe in book 2 that happens, but I don't know if I care enough about it to read it right now. So unfortunately, 3 stars, and yeah, that's Daughter of the Moon Goddess. Okay, shifting away from YA completely, I'm going to briefly mention a Cinderella retelling that I read that is a dark romance adult book called Stealing Cinderella, and that is by, let me quickly check because I forget. Let me pull up my Goodreads. Okay, yeah, Stealing Cinderella is by A. Zavarili, and it has a 3.9 on Goodreads, so almost 4 stars. It has quite a high rating. As I said, this is an adult fairy tale retelling. I have been reading retellings my entire life, and over the last few months I've read quite a few, because I would like to do in 2023 a fairy tale retelling video recommendations series for you, because I like to read so many of them. This one I don't even really want to mention because I just liked it so much. I gave it 1 star because I had to. I understood going into it that it's a dark romance, but I just could not get on board with the lack of consent in this book, and the trigger warnings for this are just tenfold. I don't even know where to get started with it. Just being captive, being enslaved, being tortured. There are like kinks and stuff in this book, which is fine, and if you like those, you can read those, and I don't think that those are an issue itself, but it was rapey. It was rapey. I don't know how else to say it. I didn't like it. And what's so difficult is because in the beginning, before we got to all this craziness, the story was actually okay. I was actually enjoying it. We're following a girl who, like, it's in modern world, it's in our world, it's in modern day, and she sneaks into this charity event because she wants to speak to a prince about donating money for her animal shelter, her farm, and she needs funds to help save it. And she sneaks in, and she's disguised, you know, a beautiful ball gown, and that part was like interesting. That was an interesting retelling aspect, and then it just went downhill from there. Just really awful. So 1 star, I don't want to talk about it anymore. I don't think I'll read from this author again. Staying within the realm of fairy tale retellings, I want to quickly mention an audiobook that I listened to in the beginning of the year. I believe it was the end of January, and that would be The Sleeper in the Spindle by Neil Gaiman. I listened to this book, and I would love to own a physical copy on Audible. If you listen to the entire thing from start to finish, so like all the credits and everything as well, without speeding it up, it's 1 hour and 5 minutes. Obviously, I skipped those beginning and end bits, and I speed it up a little bit, and it's under 1 hour. I listened to this while I cleaned the kitchen one night. I loved it. It's dark, atmospheric. It's a blend of Snow White and the Sleeping Beauty, and it's a impactful, feminist, dark fairy tale retelling. And I don't want to say any more than that because it's only 1 hour long. It's whimsical, and you definitely get the Sleeping Beauty and Snow White aspects that you've come to expect in retellings. You get castles and sleeping princesses and a journey and thorns and forests and creatures that are dark and evil, and you get sleeping villagers, and it's just really well done. So I gave it 5 stars. My rating is higher than the average on Goodreads, which is 3.89 out of 46,000 ratings. I think that's a bit low. I really enjoyed it, and I especially liked the audiobook because you got the sound effects as well. So it felt like I was listening to a story by a fire and someone was telling a dark fairy tale at night. So I really enjoyed that, and I would recommend it if you like fairy tale retellings. Keep moving this camera around. I'm really sorry. There's construction going on outside. They are building another set of apartment buildings all around us, and the sound is so loud. I'm gonna try to dim it on all these videos, but I'm really sorry if you can hear it. It annoys me too. But anyway, we are going to shift gears and we are going to talk about an adult contemporary romance, and this is one that you've definitely heard of. It is The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I read this at the beginning of the year because I just needed something a little bit different. I like to listen to adult contemporary romances because they're not my genre of choice, like to read physically, because I am a fantasy lover and reader primarily. But when I'm cleaning the house, folding laundry, doing a puzzle, you know, things like that, I will listen to an easy breezy adult romance sometimes. So I picked this one up with an Audible credit, and then I ended up watching the movie with Lucy Hale, who I love from Pretty Little Liars. I love her as Arya. But this book, it started off really great, and I know it's one of my best friend's favorite books, so I'm really sorry if you're that friend and you're listening to this. I'm sorry, I just didn't enjoy The Hating Game. It ended up being like a 2.5 star read for me. Just meh. I thought that the characters were great. Like in the beginning, I really liked who they were. Basically, you have 2 people working at a publishing company and they just don't get along. You have a girl who's, you know, colorful and messy and creative, and then you have a man who is so prim and proper and everything is lined up in place on his desk, and they just get into tiffs all the time, but they end up having this like steamy attraction to each other, and it's really sweet and cute, and I liked the majority of the book. And then we got to the end and it just seemed dumb. The miscommunication trope is not my favorite. The movie did change it a little bit, and the movie was also meh. It started off really great, and then halfway through I was like, this just isn't good. I just don't care about what's happening. I don't like the miscommunication. I don't like the we're both competing for the same job, and it's just kind of gotten old. Like if you love someone, you love someone, you do what you need to do for them. And if you are, I just had issues with it, okay? I had issues with it. I think Sally Thorne has other books out that are very popular, so I'm more than happy to give her a go again. I think that this one just didn't quite work out for me, but it's mega popular. I know there's that super cute Fairy Loot edition. This also has 3.98, so quite literally almost 4 stars, and it has 544,658 ratings on Goodreads. So my rating is below average, but again, it's not my preferred genre to read, so maybe I'm coming to this with a different lens and perspective, and I'm not the target audience for it. But I have read adult contemporary romances that I really liked. So this one just, I think it's the miscommunication. Miscommunication is my least favorite trope because it's something that can be resolved so much more easily than anything else. So anyway, that's The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. I almost forgot I read it, but I had to mention it here. The next book that I'm going to talk about is the first in a fantasy romance series that follows Fae, and it's called To Carve a Fae Heart by Tassana Odette, and I did read her Heart of the Raven Prince in a recent video, so if you recognize that, that book is a part of this world, but this is the first book in the original trilogy, and then we have the spin-off fairy tale retellings coming from this series. So this is book 1 in the Fair Isle trilogy. So this is a young adult book. It has everything basically you could want, and it reminds me a little bit of A Court of Thorns and Roses. We have kind of a modern fantasy setting for the humans. You have a young woman who's studying to become essentially a surgeon, and her mother it does what she thinks is basically just a bunch of nonsense with herbs and witchy spells, and she's like, it's not real science, what you do just isn't correct, and I don't believe anything that you're doing in. So you have that clash, you have this kind of almost like Regency era setting for the humans as well on this island, and then every 100 years there's a reaping, and the humans have to sacrifice two brides to the Fae to basically keep the peace of the land, because there was a big war and there's this divide between the humans below and the Fae above. So you recognize that trope in a lot of Fae worlds. You also have different courts like we oftentimes see in Fae fantasy books. So we have the Autumn Prince, who is the prince of the Autumn Court, and our main characters have been sent basically as a sacrificial bride to the Autumn Prince, and from there we get to explore the Fae, who have animal attributes and can turn into animals, like again many Fae books do have. They're snarky, they're brooding, you have enemies to lovers. I really did like everything in essence about this book, but nothing really stood out to me. It didn't get my heart pounding, it didn't have me gushing over the romance. It's broody and it's a little bit steamy, but not really. So I don't remember a ton that happened. All I know is that I want to continue on with the series because I did enjoy it, and I want to get to the fairy tale retellings and understand the backing of this world more, because what Tasana Adet does really well, and why she became a favorite author of mine after reading Heart of the Raven Prince, is that you see characters from other books within the stories, and they all are interconnected in some way, but you can read them out of order. But I want to read the original trilogy first because I want to explore the history of what had happened in Heart of the Raven Prince, basically, and I think that's really cool that she allows us mood readers to just read what we want to read within her fantasy world. Also, I need to mention that the hardcovers for these indie books are so beautiful. Tasana Adet is an indie author, and I would love to one day own all of her books in their hardback format because they have beautiful illustrations printed on the naked hardbacks. And also, I want to support indie authors. That's basically what I want to do with this channel, and I need to read more indie authors to be able to do that. But I recommend it. It's a classic Fae romance YA book. I'll leave you with that. Oh my gosh, I just realized I've been talking and creating video content for like 2 hours, and I just am rambling at this point. I don't even know what I'm saying about these books. Okay, so unfortunately, the 6 books that I had to wrap up today for you were all meh. They're all a bit of a mixed bag. I liked aspects of them. I didn't like aspects of the others. I really disliked Stealing Cinderella, so I don't recommend that one. But that's not to say that these authors are bad, and if one of these books is your favorite and I've just said that it's mediocre, please don't be offended. My opinion literally means nothing, and I'm just this small person in the corner of BookTube just reviewing books that I read in my spare time. So if any of these books actually sound like something that you would like, pick it up. I encourage you to read it. I encourage you to give it a go. I'm happy that I read all of them. I want to continually flesh out my TBR, read all the books that I'm interested in, and then really find my niche and what I want to read so that I don't end up spending money on beautiful hardback books that I'm gonna end up feeling meh about. I don't want to give 2 stars and 3 stars to books that I've either received in a Fairly subscription box, which I've paid £35 for, or I pre-ordered, to support my local bookstore or whatever, and it was £18. Like, that's an expensive hobby to have, to not really know if I'm going to love the book or the author or the series. So it's good that I'm reading these books, and I'm happy that I read all of them because on paper they are something that I should have loved, but for whatever reason didn't. And that being said, I'm going to leave that video here. I have some amazing 5-star reads to review for you in an upcoming video, so I'm very excited about that. So we will get to the good stuff, I promise. It just so happened that these 6 books were just meh. But anyway, if you like this video, if you like seeing my thoughts on what I'm reading, then give a big thumbs up. It really supports growing my little small channel. And leave a comment down below. Tell me a book that you read recently that just didn't hit the spot for you. For whatever reason, you should have loved it because of what it was. You thought you'd like it, you thought you'd love it, but it just didn't quite hit the mark. I want to know. I want to know what you thought about This Vicious Grace, about Daughter of the Moon Goddess, about any of the other books that I've chatted to you about. Let me know if you're going to give them a try, and I will speak to you in another video soon. I hope you have a great rest of your day and you're reading something that you love. All right, I will talk to you soon. Bye.